flown about over 2,000 commercial flights and about 3 million miles. I often get asked this question a lot. Sam, what's your worst flight experience? Or have you ever got really scared from flying? There was one time I got really scared from flying. There was a potential bomb on board on the Siberian Ilyushin 86 flights I flew in 2004. It was such a scary, chilling experience that I would like to share with you today. So what's flying an IL-86 really like? Take a look at this incredible video footage. Incredible low takeoff, incredible noisy, with a lot of vibration inside, especially the rear cabin. You pay for the whole runway and you use the whole runway for takeoff. That's how to describe an IL-86 takeoff.
Левым разворотом, поняли? Понял, да. Подъем. Безопасная скорость 300. 5. 8. Высота по первая. 5. 10. 15. 20. 30. 40. Вал сотни метров.
It's actually the first wide-body airplane made in Soviet Union, designed in the 1970s. It's actually also the world's second four-engine wide-body airplane, just after the Boeing 747. The Ilyushin 86 actually looks like an Airbus A340 with four engines just without the winglets. So many people call them the Soviet Airbus or the Soviet Aerobus. So the design theory behind the IL-86 was to have the airplane capable to operate out of any airfield that lack of the infrastructure, lack of the air bridge. So it has its own pull-down staircase to open, so passenger can board from the front and the rear staircase into the lower deck. And then they store their baggage there, and then they can proceed to walk up the upper deck upstairs to sit down, which is extremely spacious without the center bins. So the design of the airplane seats in the Soviet time was also very unique, different to the Western seats we've seen. The fan nozzle is actually directly mounted at the seat back. So the airplane has four Kuznetsov NK-86 low bypass turbofan engine. Each of these engines are capable to generate 28,600 pounds of thrust, which is well below the 747, which is typically around 50,000 pounds of thrust. So because of these low performance on these engines, the airplane has a limited range, about 4,000 to 5,000 kilometers with a full payload of 350 passengers. Typically, an IL-86 takeoff is extremely shallow on the climb and literally use up the whole runway to take off. I have seen one takeoff from Phuket, Thailand. The takeoff was so late, it rotated past the piano keys and past the runway marking, and it just got up. Literally at the end, there is a beach and it kicks up a lot of sand when it rotated. If anyone's on the beach at that time, it will be very hazardous. It's so incredibly dangerous. So in September 2004, I made my first visit to Russia. My aim was to fly as many Soviet airplanes type as possible. I had a very successful trip on that time. I've flown on Siberia Airlines, like this one here, the IL-86, in a very hybrid color of Vnukovo Airlines color, from Beijing, China, through Siberia, Novosibirsk, onto Moscow. During the whole 7 days trip, I've flown on incredible types like Il-62, Tupolev 154B2, Tupolev 154M, Yak-40, Tupolev 134, and of course the Il-86. Flashback after a week of aviation trip in Russia. On my last flight out of Russia, I was back on flying the Il-86 out of Novosibirsk. I had a great trip in Russia, in Moscow, and lots of places. And I was sitting in the rear of this Siberia Airlines Il-86, window seat on the left, just like this. And suddenly, things happened. So what happened was two very suspicious looking person just went to the bathroom in the rear. You know, the bathroom in the IL-86 is in the rear. It's a block of bathroom. They came out of the toilets and then they asked flight attendant they want to leave the airplane. They said they don't want to fly anymore. So there were passengers sitting in the rear and all hearing, you know, these two guys were requested to leave the plane. They had an argument broke out with the flight attendants in Russians. And then the passengers started gossiping, and then all you can hear in English word, they said bombs, bombs, bombs. So passengers were petrified. They were worried about they planted a bomb in the bathroom. You know, at that point, a lot of passengers are ready grabbing their staff and they're telling the flight attendant they want to leave the airplane. They don't want to fly anymore. The tension was high after the two-person wanted to leave the airplane because that week in Russia, there was a school in southern Russia being sieged by a lot of rebels, and there were 333 people got killed in that massacre and 700 got injured. So everybody was really fragile in their mind, and Russia was in a state of high alert. You know, there could be easily another bomb went off in an airplane like this, so we were very nervous. So I was sitting here anxiously waiting with other passengers, and suddenly I can see security forces, even with sniff dogs, came on board. They came on board searching, and suddenly we were just told, leave the airplane at once. So we all stood up and leaving the airplane. So all the passengers, including myself, we all got back to the terminal, and everybody have to come through the security again. And then everybody got hand searched, and later everybody got questions. So after all the heavy security check and questioning, we were just told to sit here in the terminal and wait. We don't know what's gonna happen. We're anxious whether the plane will get canceled, or we come back to fly another day, or we go back to fly the same flight. There were no video and pictures allowed. So after 3 hours of waiting in the terminal with all the uncertainty, suddenly there was an announcement. We were told the plane is ready and go back to boarding and fly. So we boarded back on our flight and took the same seats on the same plane again. It wasn't easy. A lot of people were not feeling easy. There were quite a few people demand they change the plane. They don't want to fly on the same airplane. And those two very suspicious looking person were never actually boarded back on the same plane. They were not there. So we finally took off at 5 a.m. out of Novosibirsk in Siberia. Looking out the window, oh my god, it was so low to take off, but it was so loud as well. The whole Siberia probably can feel the noise on the IL-86 takeoff. That's how loud it was. And during the flight, the plane in the back, especially in the tail section, it shook violently because we were flying over a low trough, a low weather pressure system all over Siberia. We were cruising at 35,000 feet, but it wasn't high enough. The weather system was still above us. You know, I really enjoy flying usually, but there was never a moment like that flight I want to leave the airplane. The whole plane was shaking and going up and down through the turbulence for 4 hours. It was terrible. You know, there was never a moment I want to leave the airplane so early like this one. But I was rather glad after 4 hours we finally landed safe in Beijing and I got out of the plane. Up until this date, I never actually found out what exactly happened. There was never an explanation. So that was my scariest flight experience. I hope you enjoy watching it. It was such a high tension moment and it wasn't allowed to take pictures or videos. However, I am glad that I survived that scary experience at the end, and I've flown the IL-86 4 more times in my life.
40, 66, 30, 20, 78, 15, 10, 5, 0, 270, 260, 240, 210, 190.
So sadly, because this is such an inefficient airplane with high fuel burn rates, the whole IL-86 withdrew from service from commercial flying around 2010. There were only 4 examples left, now flying with Russian Air Force as an air command post.